Warning: World Weary Podcasts occasionally discusses mature themes and uses colorful language.
All right. Imagine you're walking through a deep, plentiful forest. The canopy stretches overhead, darkening the day but littering the ground with a strong, flickering light that manages to escape through the dense green above. You're alone, but you don't feel alone. And it isn't the stag or pheasant that watches you. It isn't the owl waking as the dusk arrives. It's the otherworldly, the little folk, the mysterious creatures whose legacy has only grown with time. The forest, farmers' fields, or from what I've discovered this past week, even your own house could be littered with little folk. Sometimes invisible, sometimes camouflaged, sometimes just waiting until the moment you fall asleep to get up to their mysterious trickster ways. And take care, for many of the little folk are quite vindictive and petty, and any slight toward them may cause them to use their strange powers against you. And make sure to never follow the lights. Hi, I'm Cassiopeia Walker. I'm the American one.
And I'm the British one, Violet Star.
Tonight's topic is little folk, which has an immense amount of creatures to choose from. However, we've just chosen two to delve into tonight. I can't begin to describe the amount of information on little folk, or elves, or any of the myriad of beings that fall under this tree. So I'm focusing on one particular story concerning one particular type of little folk that, although innocuous seeming, may prove to be far more terrifying than their media image gives them credit for. And Violet will be teaching me about one of the most interesting and mysterious creatures ever to exist in human folklore. Let's begin. In a rural area outside of Porterville, California, in 2004, so really not too far away.
Yeah, pretty recently.
A woman known only as Tammy moved in with her 3 children to a farm near Tule River. And I got this information originally from mysteriousuniverse.org, and I have fluffed it up. Okay. Life at the farm was never normal to begin with when she moved in with her 3 children. The sense that she was being watched, that her family was being watched, haunted Tammy. Even the many farm animals the family owned would happily wander the property everywhere, except for the barn.
The barn! Don't go in the barn.
Not the barn! The barn, most of all, seemed menacing and ominous, as if some dark presence lurked within its timbered innocence.
Oh, God.
When possible, they would all avoid it. If they happened upon the barn in their wanderings, the animals would leave a wide berth or begin acting in an unusual manner, such as cats hissing or behaving erratically, dogs getting upset and barking, and ducks honking angrily as they waddled quickly away from the seemingly evil barn.
When the ducks are picking up on the bad vibes, you know things are bad. I
don't know if that's a duck noise. So there's strange noises emanating from the barn that also cause concern. What was it that made the animals so nervous? What was it that made Tammy so nervous? Soon enough, Tammy started to notice animals going missing.
Oh.
She knew the place she had to look in order to ascertain the cause. But perhaps too terrified to deal with the issue, she ignored it for some time. She simply rationalized the situation in her head and dismissed the evidence. Maybe her animals were getting picked off by a coyote who'd found himself a nice meal ticket. Maybe there was a skunk in the barn. Whatever it was, the single working mother of 3 did not investigate. This went on for a while until one night, Tammy returned from town, emptying her groceries from the trunk. She saw something in the corner of her eye, the fleeting glimpse of something or someone moving quickly past when she looked to see who it was, there was no one there. All right, so she went to unload the rest of the groceries, and this is the quote from Tammy about what happened next. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
This is the reveal of what horrifying little creature
Oh, God.
could be watching her. This time I heard a very freaky, very evil sounding chuckle.
Edit in evil giggle.
I'll narrate that, yeah. I looked in the direction of the sound, and there, standing about 50 yards from my son and I, was what I can only describe as a gnome.
Oh, God.
50 yards away was a 3-foot-tall creature sporting a beard and wearing baggy black pants, a gold-colored shirt, and worst of all, a red pointed cap.
Oh.
It stood there, simply staring at her. The next is a quote from Tammy as she recalls the experience. That thing grinned at us, and the creepy grin spread from ear to ear, and its teeth were a gross brown and pointed and jagged. It had a bulbous nose and large, deep-set eyes, though I really couldn't tell the color of them. I never got a closer look at it, and I don't know if it was wearing shoes or not, because at that moment I dropped my groceries, grabbed my son, and ran for the house." End quote. When they got to the house, they slammed the door behind them, letting the daughters know what happened, because it's her son and her 2 girls. Out of breath and scared, somewhere outside the house they could hear cackling. The petrified family moved upstairs, perhaps to avoid the terrifying sounds, but once upstairs, there it was again, the cackling, but this time closer. Looking to a window on the 2nd floor, they could see the very tip of a sinister red pointed cap, defying logic and bobbing menacingly outside the window, which was located at least 8 feet in the air. Tammy would close all the blinds and wait the thing out until it went away. Although she never saw the gnome up close and personal again, she would occasionally hear the deep, dark chuckle emanating from the barn.
Oh.
Eventually, living with a gnome took its toll, and Tammy, along with her children, moved away. This would not be the end of the Tule River Gnome. In 2010, a new family moved in and noticed there was something strange going on in the barn. One night, as the lovely new couple slept soundly in the early hours, they woke to the sound of a raspy, gurgling singing. When they looked out their window to investigate the source of the malicious music, there, standing by their precious pond on the property, was a creature around 3 foot tall, and they described him as wearing dark red pants, a yellow baggy shirt combined with a cute brown vest, and a dark waistcoat. The creature was also said to have a bushy gray beard, and he was wearing a red pointed cap.
Oh, God. Burn the barn!
His eyes were 2 small lumps of coal, deep-set and awful. His teeth were discolored and sharp. They looked broken and cluttered, like a singular row of shark's rotted teeth. As if it knew eyes were upon him, the creature slowly turned around, its hat dipped in the last of the moonlight. He stared up at the couple, watching him from the window. Never releasing them from its terrible gaze, the gnome locked eyes and dug his tiny little hands into the pond, snatching out a beautiful koi from it, letting loose a cackle and running off. The husband, whose koi it was, opened the window and started to shout at the little beast. However, the gnome simply turned around and gave him the finger before cackling and running on his merry way. This is the couple's account. So he's grabbed one of their pet fish, and he's given him the finger. Okay. From now on, the ironically placed garden gnomes from that the husband was so fond of were moved about the property as if it were a game. Finally fed up after weeks of the nonsense, the husband got rid of all the garden gnomes and the koi and anything else the little gnome bastard might see fit to mess with. So, like, pretty good idea. I mean, how would you deal with this situation?
I mean, I'm just fascinated by the fact that the gnome is like keeping up with the times and learning like modern like gestures and insults, you know.
This could be relevant later. I'm glad you pointed that out.
That's
so to speak.
Right now, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
This went on. So basically, this enraged the gnome. So every night from then on, he would bang on the walls, tear up the yard.
Oh, so what happened that's enraged the gnome?
He basically got rid of all the gnomes, the garden gnomes.
Oh,
that
right,
he was fucking with.
Okay.
So he got rid of all those gnomes and all the koi. You couldn't get free koi anymore.
Okay.
And so
they've stopped him messing with the gnomes
Yeah.
and taking the fish.
They've taken all his toys.
Okay.
So he fucking loses it. This gnome starts banging on the doors every night, fucking bangs on the windows, destroys the property, arbitrary times of the night, and yells in a bizarre language that neither the couple can understand, and they don't have any reference to describe it. They're like, they can't say, oh, it sounds like Japanese or this or that. And that's the end of that story, according to mysteriousuniverse.org. But that isn't the end of the story, Violet, because you know your girl did some extra research.
Oh, yeah.
So I looked through this story because apparently there was a TV show, a stupid little TV show that America did about mysteries and stuff, and this was featured on it. And I found a little website called weirdfresno.com, and I think that's been mentioned on a lot of podcasts I listen to about weird stories and stuff. But this is a quote from one of the comments, an anonymous person on a web page. Take it as you will with all of these. In regards to the gnome of Tule River, California, Anonymous said, nearby is the Porterville State Mental Ward. I think someone needs to ask the staff at Porterville if anybody has ever escaped never to be found again. There's a lot of quotations, like deformed quote, found again quote, the quote gnome could be a missing patient.
So that's their first idea then,
Yes.
is that their first way of rationalizing this.
So I think it's interesting that, because wasn't mentioned in any of the articles, in any of the TV shows, but locals know, and this is a site for local, like, weirdos. So, but here's the thing. Someone claiming to be Tammy, calling herself Tammy Thomas, commented on the website. I am Tammy Thomas from the Creepy Gnome Porterville story. The thing that we saw was horrible. It could be what the person who owns this blog said it was. A red hat, I called it gnome as is what it resembled to me. I did move, but only about a half a mile down the road, and still with the Tule River running behind us. I did not know when I moved here that some of my neighbors had had experiences with the creepy gnome way before I told my story. They were run out of the river by the thing twice at 2 different locations. Well, for the past several months, we have started having the same experiences we did at the other place. We have heard creepy cackly laugh, heard something running around the house. One night as I was lying on the couch, I heard something running very fast across my deck, and it hit the gate so hard it flew end over end. The thing running was too heavy to be a cat, but too fast to be a human. Another night I was lying on the couch. She does a lot of lying on the couch. Noticed something moving out of the corner of my eye on the deck. The mini blinds were down, but not shut, and I saw that the creepy gnome, or red hat, standing next to a shelf on my deck where I kept my yard ornaments, fairies and things like that, which had gone missing. I closed the slats on the mini blind with my hand, but the curtain was pulled away from the slider. And I did not see it, but I knew it was looking at me through the curtain. I tried to lie really still, and when my grandson came in, I told him what happened, and he pulled the curtain closed. He looked around outside only to find some small footprints on a white shelf that is in our storage shed. So the thing is still here and terrorizing me and my neighbors.
So it sounds like if it is a gnome, a supernatural gnome, that it is somehow attached to that area, to like that river or like that settlement,
and it's still
rather than just a
farmland.
particular family or a particular barn.
And it's very rural.
Yeah.
It's not built up.
So it's like its base is that somewhere in that settlement or in that community. Yeah. But if gnomes are a real species.
I think I found the closest thing we've got. Like, I've looked through so many stories of brownies, duendes, like all sorts of different types of gnomes. I had to cut down. There are a lot of stories from Native America, from Japan, from everywhere.
Every culture has a little.
Every Finland, Norway, all those countries, they all have their own version, and it scared the shit out of me. So I focused on one from America that scared the shit out of me as a modern tale, because there's some stories out there.
Man, this episode is going to really make you regret chucking away the lovely present that I bought you about 8 years ago.
Okay. Describe the gnome you brought to me.
I gifted you a lovely gnome statue that it had a motion sensor on it, so it wolf whistled at anyone that went past, and I tried to hide it in your flat.
I was in the kitchen and I just heard. Well, I was trying to make coffee because it was behind the curtain. And
you tried to get rid of it.
I threw it away, and then
outside. I found it because you didn't do a very good job of getting rid of the gnome. It was just waiting outside your apartment, and I helped it back inside again.
Oh, God.
That gnome could still be following you around.
Well, I don't think so, because I fucking destroyed that motherfucker. I'm not having it. This is the thing. If I have a proper garden someday, I might get some gnomes, but I want a nice custom gnomes. I don't want sexual objectifying me gnome in the corner. Oh man, that's my story, man.
Oh, so today I have a piece on Boggarts.
Okay, I'm excited because I knew what you were doing, but I actually don't know much about them. So I'm strapped in, ready to be transported. This is gonna be great. Boggart puns away. I'm gonna be calculating them in my head.
Yes, Boggarts. So, if you're listening and you're a member of the Harry Potter generation, which I like to abbreviate to Harry Po, and you might be kind of familiar with Boggarts because they are like fictional, kind of important fictional creatures from the Harry Po universe.
What house are you?
Ravenclaw.
I'm Slytherin.
I
think we would have still been friends. My husband's Gryffindor. A lot of my friends are Gryffindor and Hufflepuff and all over the place. Sorry.
It's fine.
Just so the viewers, listeners know.
They know what they're dealing with.
They know
Ravenclaw and Slytherin. They know Hufflepuff and here, bitch. Yeah, you might be like, whoa, hold on. Those are like, just fictional stuff that J.K. Rowling came up with. Well, actually, they are very, very real. At least they've existed in English folklore for a super long time. What is a boggart? Have you got any idea, Cassie?
From what... Okay, I knew what it was before I read Harry Potter because I was a weird kid. But I don't... Okay, let me try and delve into my memory.
I mean, the thing is, Harry Potter have kind of... J.K. Rowling took the actual idea of boggarts, but they're a little bit different. And the rules around what a boggart is and can do have been changed for the purposes of the Harry Po universe.
I'm going to say I'm as ignorant as they come. The idea I have of it is like a shadowy creature who fucks shit up. I think I might be confusing it with a poltergeist, though.
Well, no, you're right. There are definitely some... there's a real serious correlation with poltergeist activity and boggarts.
When I read about poltergeist, I think it mentioned them, and that's why I know the name and why I knew about it before I read Harry Potter. Yeah, enlighten me about the specifics.
I'm gonna enlighten you real good on Boggarts. So, what is a Boggart? A lot of people are familiar with things like brownies, which are like cheeky but generally not malicious household spirits, which do nice stuff like clean your shoes at night while you sleep or do your laundry.
And if you give them cloth, they get real mad, like, neither I will work for these since you gave me a sock to me.
So I've seen people describe Boggarts as the angry version of a brownie, or like the angry version of a hobgoblin, like a house elf, house spirit kind of thing. You know, but whereas brownies and hobgoblins can do nice stuff or they can be good, the folklore in England tells us to be frickin' afraid of Boggarts. They are definitely malevolent, they are mischievous, but in a, you know, mischievous in a way that they also want to hurt you and maim you while playing with you. They are dangerous.
We're in England, Violet, no!
So, thinking about brownies, the good guys, you may not know this. I'm sure I've told you at some point or it's come up in conversation, but I genuinely actually used to be a brownie. I actually was a brownie. An official brownie.
Oh, really? Like, as in, how does that work?
Girl guiding.
Oh.
So in the UK...
I wasn't a brownie. Whoa, I skipped brownies. Brownies is the young girls, and then you become...
In the UK, I don't know, I'm sure it probably translates the same in America, but you have rainbows are like preschool kind of age. Brownies, you can be a brownie till you're like 10 or 11, and then you become a guide, and then post like 18 or 16 you can be a ranger, and that's like the top.
I was just a year above brownies. My little sister was a brownie, and so I can't claim that. I was a guide for about a year, and then mainly we watched Sailor Moon in the middle of nowhere.
Brownies was a kind of a good experience, actually. I haven't got anything too bad to say. We pretty much just sang songs and played games and like did like craft and stuff. It was just like after school babysitting essentially, but they'd get a whole bunch of you and it was a little bit kind of military.
Legit, my brain when you said I was a brownie did not go. I was like, was she actually? I was like imagining you like cleaning people's socks. And I would have believed you because I know you've lived a very colorful life. I was like, was she saying she's a servant for someone?
So at brownies, they divide you into like little clans within your brownie group. Okay. So like the brownie group I went to was like held at my primary school in like one evening a week. And you have like this little yellow and brown uniform and like a brown sash with all your badges on and like a brown kilt, like brown culottes. We had brown culottes and like a yellow jumper.
No, they've kept it in real.
And brownies was great because the little clans within brownies, so everyone was divided into groups normally of 6, or I think there's a max of 6 people in each group, and they're called sixes. And each 6 is named after a folklore creature. So I was in the Imp 6, and our badge emblem we had on our sash had this little yellow bowl dude, like a little like dancing imp. So I was super envious because my best friends at the time at Brownies were in elves and sprites. And elves had like a nice dainty little freaking cute elf badge, and sprites had like a green like freaking little like fairy. Imps. But I have to say, it could have been worse. I could have been in Gnomes. Because their badge, I'm pretty sure it literally had a little old man pushing a wheelbarrow on it.
That's what I would have been in, I know.
You would totally have been a gnome. No. And in brownies, you have like ranks and stuff. So in each 6, you have a sixer who is the leader of the group, which is normally the oldest.
Head imp.
Yeah, the head imp or the head elf or like whatever gnome, right? And then you have a second or a seconder who's like second in command.
In case the first one dies.
In case, yes. And they eventually will become the sixer. And because of the way that I joined brownies, like, I think a bit older than, like, my friends had started, like, really young, like, whenever they were first eligible to join.
Yeah, same.
But I was a little bit older, so I literally, as soon as I got initiated, you do your brownie promise, which is like a ritual ceremony to be an official brownie. And then, so it wasn't long after that I got made the seconder of my group, and my friend was the sixer of the group. And so I was seconder for like ages, like years. Wow. I was like the right hand of the sixer, the like right hand advisor brownie of the clan, like manipulating the group from behind the scenes while my friend was like, who was kind of hopeless at like organizing any activity, or like you're always competing against the other clans to like win points or like treats and prizes and stuff. And trying to get like we'd have to like choose what badge or like challenge we were gonna win the next week, like whether it was like get the baking and cooking badge or like make a fire badge. And so that was pretty cool. And then I did eventually surpass my friend when she was older than me, and she reached like 10 years old. She had to leave.
How did that feel?
I'd been hanging in there as like the evil wizard advisor for like years, like manipulating from behind. And I finally became king. I finally became sixer of the clan, but literally for 10 days, because then I turned 10 and had to leave. So I would like finally got my glory, and then I died off like immediately. So that kind of sucked. And then I had to join Girl Guides, and I had a bad time at Girl Guides. Maybe the guiding group that I joined was pretty bad, but I mean, I'm scarred from that experience.
We'll talk more about that.
There's plenty of time to bring up guides, but yeah, it's pretty cool to have been, I can say I was actually a brownie. Yeah. An imp. Represent imps.
Yeah.
So, back to Boggarts, the evil version of brownies who are out doing the good, helpful things in the you can have household Boggarts that are attached to a homestead or a family, but a lot of Boggarts are like outdoors only Boggarts. So they like appear in like fields or like a particular bit of woodland or a marsh, and especially things like holes and pits or like caves. And most of the Boggart folklore is from up north. So like Lancashire, Yorkshire is like the land of Boggarts. Like they've got the most Boggart stories.
They have the most shadows as well.
Yeah, I mean it's up north. It's as a southern softie, up north is pretty bleak. It's the kind of place you can imagine people would come up with Boggarts to like explain stuff away. And it's also the sort of place you can imagine a Boggart would want to kind of hang out. So there are some kind of variants of Boggarts that are kind of related. So like bogies and boggles and bogeymen all comes from the idea of Boggarts. But for the purposes of today's story, I'm going full traditional Boggart. None of this bogeyman stuff, although it's related. And it's difficult to pin down what a Boggart should look like, because sometimes they're described as like, like a kind of squat, ugly little goblin person. But sometimes they're like beasts. Sometimes they're more like fairy-like or like sprite kind of creatures. So in a lot of ways, they're more of like a nature spirit or a spirit creature rather than always being a totally physical creature. It's a bit kind of wishy-washy. So for example, there's a Boggart of Longer Head or Heed from Yorkshire that was described as being the size of a calf with long shaggy hair and eyes like saucers, and it trailed a long chain after itself, which made a noise like the baying of hounds.
Jesus Christ.
So it like haunted some fricking wherever Longer Head or Longer Heed in Yorkshire
like
is.
It had a lot more hounds around it then. Oh, that's creepy.
And then the Boggart of Hackensall Hall in Lancashire had the appearance of a huge horse. So that's something different, another animal. And then the Horbury Boggart was said to resemble a great hairy beast with big red eyes and smelling of dead meat. So they're ugly, or they're frightening creatures, or they're like, you know, not just like a cute pony, like
And
a
they're
freaking
always
scary dark horse or a weird dog-like beast. So outdoorsy ones are, you know, seem kind of more scary than the idea of the Boggarts that freak people out at their house.
I don't know. I'd rather have one that's like way out there that I hear in the distance that, you know.
So it seems like outdoors they're more animal-like.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
like the ones that are around the house are going to be like smaller to like fit inside a homestead
cupboards.
or something, like hide somewhere, you know what I mean? Maybe that's just the way they manifest, you know, in a house, or outdoors maybe they have more power to kind of shapeshift or do tricksy things. So, Cassie.
Oh god.
How do we know if we have a Boggart in our house?
Ooh. Is there dark markings on the door? On the tops of the doors?
Possibly. These are the kind of stuff you want to look out for.
Okay.
If you suspect that there's a possibility you've got a Boggart in your house. So they like to do stuff like climb into people's beds while they're sleeping, or like stand or like jump around on top of the bed while you're asleep.
I swear I've had that happen before in a different house. Like when oh no, Violet.
It's no! They might touch you in a kind of creepy way at night while you're sleeping in bed with their clammy little hands. Or like poke you with a long nail, or like, you know, mess with you in some way. They yank off the duvet while you're asleep. They'll do stuff like move things around, hide stuff in your house, or like make things disappear. Sour the milk is a common one, which would have been a bummer in the olden days when you couldn't just go up the shop and buy some more milk.
Yeah.
Make domesticated animals lame, so they'll like mess with pets or like farm animals. And if you get a Boggart in your house, even if you move, the Boggart will likely follow you and your family and continue to haunt you wherever you go.
God.
So they'll like attach themselves to a family, as well as like, you know, sometimes they're attached to like a homestead or like a particular place. Sometimes they'll literally attach themselves to that family. So wherever that family goes, the Boggart will follow them.
Oh wow.
So that's the house Boggarts, the Boggarts that are attached to like people or like a home basically. But that kind of messing around, hiding trinkets and stuff in your house, making the milk sour, whatever, disabling your dog, that stuff is child's play.
Oh god.
Compared to what the outdoors Boggarts do.
Oh no.
They are way more sinister. Mainly, they've got a thing for abducting children and eating and killing people.
What the fuck?
So if someone back in the day in like Lancashire or Yorkshire, where Boggarts are really kind of famous, if someone in the village like walked out into the marshlands and didn't come back, people would kind of assume they'd been eaten by the Boggarts that lived out in the wild. If a horse had a fright whilst you're travelling along a trackway or a road, people might say that the horse had been spooked by a Boggart, like hiding in a hedge, or had like touched the horse or something. And a lot of those outdoors Boggarts would manifest in the form of like a big dog or a wolf or some other kind of beast, and do stuff like they'll block or like protect a stretch of road that travellers are walking along, kind of stop you from like getting to your destination, or they'll haunt like a particular crossroad or something. So some Stephen King fans will compare Pennywise from It to a Boggart. It's a really good example of the way a Boggart, you could imagine a Boggart manifesting in the modern era, because Pennywise is mischievous. He haunts dangerous kind of subterranean places in Derry. He abducts and eats children and vulnerable people that get lost. The only difference is that it's very obvious that Pennywise is a shapeshifter, and not all the traditional Boggarts in English folklore are shapeshifters, but there's still that trickster element. So that's a really good comparison,
and
I think,
he's
of like
tied to that town, isn't he?
Yeah. So he's sort of tied into a place.
I mean, if you read
but
the
he's
book,
hanging
you know
out.
that you know what's up, but
Exactly.
well,
So
his Stephen King's version, but yeah, maybe he's
I think Stephen King probably got a little bit of inspiration from that just universal character of kind of a boggart or a kind of maleficent spirit or something. So, here are some famous boggart tales from up north in England. I can't.
North?
Yeah, my Yorkshire accent is super bad.
Oh, let me do mine so you feel better.
Okay.
Yorkshire pudding. I'm so sorry.
A Yorkshire accent is kind of drunk sounding. Lancashire's like a more drunk version of a Yorkshire
accent. Are we
accent.
gonna get letters? Please contact us.
Up north is that's
Okay.
where that's the kind of accent you need to imagine.
Okay.
They're like Yorkshire.
I really need to go up there. I've never been. Let us know where the best places to eat are.
I've got some recommendations at the end of this episode of places you can all go visit. Okay, so true story. This place is called Boggart Hole, Clough, or Clough. I have no idea how they pronounce it up north. I actually have a feeling it's Clough, but if it was down south, we would probably say Clough.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to call it Boggart Hole in this story. Boggart Hole, a nature reserve near Blakely in Manchester. It's literally only a few miles from Manchester city centre.
Okay.
So it's like this last expanse of nature kind of now trapped in the urban area. It's about 190 acres of woodland and park. And by the name Boggart Hole, you could kind of tell that it is haunted by boggarts. And it's super famous for them. So in the early 1800s, a farmhouse that used to be located in that area of Boggart Hole was so terrorised by a boggart that the resident farmer called Farmer Bell and his family were driven from their home. As they left their home, they were like, frickin' get the fuck out of here. They passed a neighbour's house who lived down the way, and the neighbour popped his head out and asked, oh, are you guys leaving? And the farmer said, aye, we're flitting, which means we're getting the fuck out of here in olden days English. Only to hear his words repeated back to him by an unseen force.
Oh my god, he's with them!
AKA the boggart. So the boggart was following him and his family.
This is when you need a witch to cleanse you of the boggart.
Hell yeah.
This is what happens when you kill all the witches and then you lose your knowledge.
You lose the police. You lose the supernatural police.
Yeah.
Who need to be there to help people deal with this
Where's
stuff.
your fucking... Oh.
So yeah, this family, they left only to realise that the boggart would follow them wherever they went. And the tale goes that the family actually ended up having to return to the farmhouse at Boggart Hole because they couldn't get rid of the boggart.
Yeah, you're going to have to just stay there and figure it out.
After that, it's kind of got a happier ending because the boggart, when they kind of accepted that the boggart was they were never going to be able to get rid of it, the boggart would occasionally help them out by doing things like doing the laundry without being asked.
Well, maybe that nice forest farmland's better than the Manchester City. Maybe it's all one football game too many.
Yeah. But other times it would still kind of do this poltergeisty stuff, like throw stuff around the house, break items, etc. So obviously that farmhouse and all of that has disappeared, and now Boggart Hole is pretty much just a nature reserve for like local people to go on dog walks, have a picnic, take a walk or a jog. It's just a nice bit of nature for people to kind of get away from the hustle and bustle of Manchester city centre. And there's a rock in the parkland known as the Giant's Tooth, which you can still go and find today, which supposedly marks the place where one man fought a boggart in the park.
Wow.
After discovering one under a bridge. So there's like waterways, because it's a huge piece of parkland, there's like waterways, there are woods, there are little bridges like crisscrossing these like streams and stuff. So local residents still tell tales of boggarts emerging now from the drains that have been built into the park.
Wow.
And that they'll hide underneath bridges in the park. And some people even claim that the boggarts there attract other supernatural phenomena in the park. So that there's also like ghosts. There's a white lady that haunts some woodland in the park. So it's so like believed there that locals will even do stuff like hang like votive offerings in the park to ward off the Boggarts or like appease the Boggarts. Like people will hang cans of beer in a very Mancunian kind of way, hang beer cans on trees in the park to kind of ward off the Boggarts. So
tankards of ale, Violet. Tankards of ale. All right.
It's Manchester.
It's
Manchester.
The great citizens of Manchester.
So, true story number 2. The Grizzlehurst Boggart.
Every name in England is terrifying. Everywhere you go is terrifying.
We've gone from Boggart Hole to Grizzlehurst Boggart. So, we're taking a trip back. It's 1861.
All right, my teeth hurt. My boobs are on my back. Let's go.
This author and poet called Edwin Waugh published an account of a boggart in Lancashire. So, while visiting the area, Edwin went on a walk to a little settlement called Grizzlehurst. And he was up there. He's obviously a young sort of gentleman. He's admiring these old farmhouses at Grizzlehurst when he encounters an old weaver and his wife who've lived there for a long time, and they tell him about the history of the area.
Weaving, lovely weaving. I'm so scared.
And the old weaver, he points out to Edwin a famous spot in the settlement where an ash tree is growing close to a bend in the road. And he tells Edwin that's where the boggart is buried.
So you can kill a boggart.
So, presumably, at some point in the past, the villagers of Grizzlehurst had frickin' taken down a boggart.
Had enough.
So the old man said that the boggart had been buried a long time ago and that it was a very difficult ordeal and that it had to be buried along with a bird with a stake driven through it.
Wow.
So this is this burial scenario. So there's an ash tree growing over where the boggart's grave is. Like rowan trees, ash trees are supposed to have some power over the supernatural, so they're like wards against like witches and spirits. So that's kind of an auspicious spot to have a grave to kind of keep a boggart under lock a little bit. And burying a bird with the boggart might connect to superstitions that the soul departs the body in the form of a bird. So like maybe driving a stake through a body of like a chicken or something and burying that with this boggart would kind of stop the boggart from being able to escape. So it kind of suggests like the boggart was buried alive, like it was impossible to kill, that they just had to like put its body in the ground with this kind of using this bird with a stake driven through it as a spell.
Or maybe they forced the boggart into the bird after killing gets the form. It jumps into the bird and then they kill the bird before it gets away or something. I don't know. Crazy.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Maybe the bird was the soul of the boggart and they've driven a stake through it to kind of keep it from escaping and causing mischief.
Animals that manage to take spirit form.
But the thing is, boggarts can shapeshift into like an animal form. Maybe that's some kind of... Maybe it's something to do with that. So the locals at Grizzlehurst were frightened to walk past the spot where the boggart was buried. Like, if they were alone or if they were walking at night.
And if you're local, it might remember you. Like, even if you're generations later.
Absolutely. And the old man was, like, dead against digging anywhere near that spot. He was kind of, like, worried about anyone doing any kind of work or, like... I mean, it was so rural back then, but, like, now maybe someone's, like, built on top of the grave. So, although buried, this is what was, like, super creepy, was that the boggart was still able to have some kind of power from its grave. It was still able to kind of perform old tricks. It still had some kind of power to like play pranks. So it would frighten horses or like cause problems for people trying to take their cart along that road past the grave. And the old couple said that the Boggart was behind disturbances that were still happening at a farm a bit further along the road from the burial. And that the farmer's wife that lived in that house, she'd heard noises and banging sounds in her home at night, and that an invisible force had tried to throw her out of bed as well. So this was all blamed on the fact that this Boggart still had some power, even though it was sort of buried with like a spell on it to like hold it into the ground. So that was the story of the Grizzlehurst Boggart.
Jeez.
Short and sweet, but
I wonder if anybody has any updates. World Weary Podcast.
If you live in Grizzlehurst and you know where the Boggart is buried, has someone built on that spot? Can anyone find where the old ash tree was? Maybe it got chopped down. Maybe there's a hedge grown over it.
When's the story was 1860 something?
So it's published in 1861.
So long ago. 150, 60 years, 100 something years.
But then Lancashire's pretty rural, and I think Grizzlehurst is still probably like a village, or a hamlet or something. So
yeah, let us
who knows?
know.
So our conclusions after hearing those two stories. There's definitely some poltergeist activity happening with Boggarts. Like maybe people are just.
Poltergeist might just
it's one
be
way
the
of
newest
explaining.
Interpretation.
Yeah. It's just that's poltergeist what we would now call poltergeist activity, but these people explained it as these Boggarts, these like invisible spirit creatures.
I can't tell you how many gnome stories I had to cut to focus on that story. If you YouTube Duende, it's like Spanish version of elves, but it covers gnomes in a big way. There are some really hilarious, probably fake videos, but like really well done and creepy of like just gnomes. They're really scared of them, man. They're as popular as UFO sightings. There's so many little creatures that, and even to this day, they're getting sighted and stuff. I've never seen one, but I know friends who, and I've heard of other people who've seen like weird things like that. When we're going to get into other types at some point, but just as an introduction, everyone knows sort of what gnomes are in their head. There's a billion different types depending on where you're from.
But it's just about, it's like putting...
like a niece.
Yeah. And it's like putting a name to things that are weird and scary, like mischievous trickster stuff that we now would blame on a poltergeist of like moving stuff around, messing with stuff in a house that's or attached to a particular family, so it doesn't matter where they go, the poltergeist follows them.
Yeah.
We now call that a poltergeist. These people are explaining it with gnomes, or it just manifested differently in a way that people think it's gnomes or it's Boggarts. Or maybe like looking at my stories, which were, fairly in the past, like at least over 100 or so years ago, maybe it's just putting a name to things that are unexplained or scary or frightening, like why you feel weird about passing over a spot on a road or walking alone at night, or explaining a noise or something that you hear in the night.
Why you feel like something's watching you.
These people put a name to it, and that name was it's a Boggart. The other thing is that with Boggarts, it's clearly been a good way to warn people away from dangerous places.
Like swamps.
Exactly. There are loads of places like caves, marshes, holes, bridges
Dark,
that are named
places.
that are named Boggart, or like Boggart Hole or Boggart Pit or Boggart Cave. For example, in the Yorkshire Dales, there are tales of these flesh-eating Boggarts that live in these kind of holes and limestone caverns and stuff in the Dales, which would be a dangerous place. You want to stop your kids, or you want to stop people from going out there because they could get into trouble, they could fall into the holes. It's a dangerous place to visit. So by creating a story where you're saying there are freaking flesh-eating creatures in those pits, in those holes, on that remote moorland, that would freaking stop your kids from playing there.
That would be enough for me.
But what if there really are mischievous, maleficent, supernatural creatures out
I
there.
have to burn some more sage in this room after this. I burned some before the start, but I feel like every time we get okay, go ahead.
So, this is my Boggart helpline.
Okay.
So let's say that my discussion on Boggarts is really resonating with you,
Okay, yeah.
and you're like, oh shit, I think I've got a Boggart in my house.
It's okay, listen.
The milk's been souring, your donkey mysteriously got a lame leg. You're not alone, because I've seen a bunch of anonymous accounts on the internet from people who are pretty sure that they have a Boggart in their house.
Oh my gosh.
So, this is a direct quote from
the layers,
Anonymous.
Violet.
And here we go. I know I sound like an idiot, but I need an explanation. My Christmas tree fell down a while ago, and there was no reason why it should have, because it was already up for like a week, and the ornaments were spaced evenly. There were no windows open, and my dog was upstairs with me. About an hour later, the shelf in the laundry room fell, and everything on it fell to the ground, and our floor was soaked with laundry detergent. My dog barks at random times at random places, and he is a perfectly healthy dog, can see, hear, smell perfectly for a dog. Great writing, lady. Also, for the past week, my alarm clock has been not ringing, when I remember setting both of my clocks the night before for 6 a.m, and I know I couldn't have turned it off in my sleep because my one alarm clock is called Clocky, and it rolls off my nightstand across the room, and my other one has an off button that is extremely hard to reach, and I would have had to get out of bed just to turn it off.
She really needs to wake up in the morning, doesn't she?
She needs a...
Clocky, where have you gone, Clocky?
This woman needs a English literature and language lesson, I think. Is there possibly a Boggart living in my house? In brackets, not the kind from Harry Potter. Yours sincerely,
yes,
Anonymous. So, you think there's a Boggart in your house. So, I've done some sleuthing. I've been on the Goblin helpline websites. I've looked for every bit of advice out there, all the suggestions of what you should do. So I know you might be getting attached to this like ugly little Boggart man hiding in your house, and it'd be tempting to give them a pet name like Lucky or Dave or something. But the number one rule is, do not give the Boggart a name.
Oh my god.
Names equal power, and if you name the Boggart, apparently they can get out of control. They can go around destroying stuff, and there's nothing you can do to get rid of them. You've given them the power of a name.
That's the power of human magic. We manifest things. We're one of the only creatures that can make tools and then think of something and then build it. That is magic to me. To me, that feels like magic.
100%. Names, giving something a name,
and that
gives it power.
Yeah, and that's... Oh my gosh, what are you doing? Don't do that. Don't do that, listener. Don't name it. They're like, oh no, I've called it Georgie.
Number 2, you can try hanging a horseshoe on your front door. I've heard of that for like fairies, like having like an iron horseshoe and stuff like that. You can leave a pile of salt outside your bedroom door if it's pulling off the sheets and stuff at night.
Okay.
A lady called Wendy on the internet, on a kind of Boggart helpline website, recommends making sure that the Boggart isn't actually a brownie. Who I've mentioned earlier.
Pissed off because you've neglected him and not given him cake.
The thing is, brownies, they're overall good guys, but they can be naughty. They can be naughty.
Yeah, I read a lot about them as well.
So you maybe, if you're a bit unsure whether you've got a brownie or a Boggart in your house, then you might want to try Wendy's tip, which is leave out some milk and snacks for it, and
by your hearth, your oven, or your TV.
Brownies will go for that. Boggarts like kind of so sort of dark, they probably don't eat milk and brownies. They would just like destroy it.
Brownies are easily offended and they get enraged, but if you leave them cakes and stuff, they'll get really happy.
You can win them over, you know.
But don't give them clothing.
Yeah.
Because they'll get pissed off and give you ill luck.
Yeah. You can also, if you're pretty sure then that you've got brownie because it's been eating the cookie and drinking the milk, and maybe it's like been cleaning your shoes or something while you're asleep, then Wendy also suggests you could try communicating with it, either vocally or leaving a note in writing. She suggests in Gaelic because apparently brownies don't speak English or the language of the country they're residing in. According to Wendy, they're purely Celtic creatures.
Okay.
I have some questions for Wendy about that.
Well,
but
I've got.
go ahead, use Google Translate, get some Gaelic.
Yeah, why not?
Gaelic out for the brownie.
And brownies won't get pissed off if you see them. They rarely manifest, but they won't be mad at you for seeing them, unlike gnomes and other little folk who get really pissed off. Brownies are totally cool. They've been known. There are town brownies across England that had town brownies. There was one brownie who actually, when his good lady, the lady of the house, was pregnant and there was no one around, he ran to the doctor and fetched the doctor.
I mean, brownies are like Dobby, in their house
she's
elves.
Ripped that off, and that's why
They totally ripped. Dobby is like a brownie.
He gets free, but
he's kind of naughty, he's a bit tricksy, but overall he's supposed to be a good guy. Although, for the record, Dobby is my most hated character.
I
hate him with a vengeance.
This is why we get along.
Yeah.
Dobby haters unite.
Okay, so back to you've got a boggart in your house. If we figured out it's probably not a brownie if it's not
he didn't
being
eat
cute.
The cake.
It's freaking angry, it's messing you up, it's trying to kill you. Another thing you can try might be releasing another more powerful magical creature into your home in the same way that for example, if you've got rats, you get a cat. You've got a snake problem, release some mongooses. So maybe you could try coaxing like a really powerful brownie into your home with like cakes and milk or whatever, and that will get rid of the boggart.
Here's how you summon a brownie. You take a stone, you drill a hole in that stone, and you put wormwood in it. That will bring a brownie to you, according to the research I did last week.
Sweet.
So you do that, try and
get that brownie in.
Get that brownie
Feed
in.
it up on freaking muffins and pancakes and milk, whatever that brown. If you're in Manchester, some beer cans. Maybe the brownies are into that. So you could try that and see if that will expel the boggart. Maybe it'll like have a kind of big fight or something, scare off the boggart. Finally, if the boggart that is terrorizing your home takes a physical form, that like it's always like a squat little man rather than something more kind of wishy-washy and floaty or animal-like. If it's got a very obvious solid form that it takes, then you could try capturing it, you could try maiming it or shooting it or something.
Kick it in the nuts.
Take the advice of the people of Grizzlehurst and you try burying it with like a bird stake thingy.
Don't tell Peter. Just do what you gotta do.
And maybe that will lessen your problems. Maybe that will lessen them. Alternatively, if you're weird and you feel your life is missing a boggart, you could go out and try to find one. There are tons of places in England named after boggarts, which might be a good clue to help you find one. So we already talked about the Boggart Hole near Blakely in Manchester, which is the nature reserve. Which looks like a beautiful place to visit. And I also mentioned the Boggart Roaring Holes in the Yorkshire Dales, which is where the flesh-eating boggarts live, down in these like limestone pits.
Do not listen to Ms. Starr's awful advice.
There's also the Boggart Stones on the Saddleworth Moor near Manchester, which overlook the place where the Moor's murderers, so that's Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, buried the bodies of some of the children they had abducted. So that's a pretty auspicious place that's got some bad vibes that's associated with boggarts.
Here's the thing. The word comes from bog.
Yeah.
And that's a Latin derivative if I ever heard one.
Swampy, shitty, don't go in the dangerous swampy place. There's also a place called Cave Ha at Giggleswick in Yorkshire, which is said to be inhabited by a boggart, so you could go visit that. And Moster near Manchester had a famous boggart known as Nut Nan, so they named theirs. So they haven't got that one is definitely still running around because they named it. And Nut Nan apparently runs around in these hazel thickets in Moston, and screams as
my
people pass. Like it like flits around, darting between hazel bushes and like screams at people.
Can you imagine being walking there and hearing that? I would piss myself.
And finally, there is a place called the Boggart Bridge, which you can visit in Burnley, Lancashire, where tradition says that whoever crosses the bridge must give a living thing to the Boggart or forfeit his or her soul.
No! Now that I'm thoroughly terrified, I just wanted to say, like, if you've got stories of a gnome incident, other little folk incident, maybe you have a brownie you'd like to talk about, maybe a little Tawny Joe in your household, or you've had strange things, please email us at worldwearypodcast@gmail.com because we want to hear them. Eventually, we'll probably start doing episodes. If you guys send us your stories, we'll definitely feature them. I want to know more because just a week of research, it's crazy.
If you think you've got a boggart or a brownie in your house, if you think you've got a poltergeist, but now after listening to this, you're pretty sure that that poltergeist identifies as a brownie or boggart, maybe we can help you. I mean, come up with some more suggestions. Try out some of the advice that I found on getting rid of them out of your house, from expelling them. How did you make friends with your brownie? Take your brownie to therapy.
We've not been getting along. So I just don't want you doing the dishes overnight. It's just getting to be having to explain that to my mother. It's just getting to be exhausting. Well, I mean, this is the thing.
Or is it the great thing, you know, it's like, well, the husband doesn't freaking do the laundry, but the brownie will do the laundry without having to be asked. Like, he'll just spontaneously do nice stuff for you, like clean your shoes and then like, it's causing tension in your marriage.
It's ridiculous. No, I honestly think that there are so many of these stories, just by touching the very tip of the gnome hat, I was able to I was so creeped out that I'm glad it snowed because it made it easier for me to distinguish whether a gnome was in the garden. Because when I was just outside in the garden the other day, and every shadow, just imagine living in that world. Every shadow is a possibility.
I mean, this is the thing. We've just had this huge snowfall here, so we've been kind of trapped in our houses.
For
and
3 days.
Thank God we live so close to each other at the moment, because I can just about manage the walk. But imagine waking up in the morning, you open your back door into your garden on all that fresh snow, and there are creepy little gnome footsteps.
Oh, no.
Leading up to, like, the door.
Here's the worst part. We did see little footsteps. This is the thing. When I woke up the next day, after researching all this stuff and scaring myself, I opened the door, and there were little steps that stopped. And I was like, oh, it's just a bird. But the first thing that came to my mind was, no! And then I reasoned, blah, blah, blah. But have I accidentally attracted gnomes?
I think you've disrespected the whole gnome culture by chucking out the gnome gift that I gave you all those years ago.
No, it was, you guys don't even understand. Google wolf whistle gnome and you'll probably find where did you get that? The charity shop?
I can't remember.
Just the torture. Well, next week, you're in charge, aren't you?
Yeah.
Do you want to introduce next week's topic right now so they have something to look forward to?
It's a surprise.
Okay, it's a surprise. Well, you're in charge, so... But yes, next week, Violet
I will be the master next week.
Yes.
I've got something a little different planned.
Well, until then, I hope you guys can cope with all the bullshit in the world, and I hope it's just a little less weird now.
Send us your brownie and boggart stories.
Yes. Were you a brownie? Are you going to convince your friends you were a brownie, like me, and then manipulate them while they're staring at you recording a podcast? Let us know. Also, we've got a Twitter at WorldWearyPod, and we'll probably have an Instagram set up pretty soon, probably just shortly after release and things like that. So look out for us.
And we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.